Ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen, this is Ultra Magnus. This is our WNHL Weekly video, and this week I'm just basically going through everything in detail before the postseason kicks in. Just going to review a few things, give some updates for Season 3, some potential things to see down the road, likely before Season 3 even starts. Right now, we're on the Season 3 sign-up page. I know Halifax, he has his game time decision, more or less. He doesn't want to commit to it because of the games, and he'll be a last-minute add. However, that's perfectly fine. G-Lock, there's already been the discussions. He's moving to Saguenay. He's bringing some Quebec presence to the league. And then finally, Aftershock, he's finishing up his seasonal work, and he says he'll definitely be available for Season 3. But he told me that basically he says he'll be ready for Season 3, but just in case he isn't, right now, if everything falls into suit, we have 27 teams, which is great. Ideally, I'd like to have 28, because then that would give 7 in each division, 14 on each side, and then we'd be able to do the interdivision 4 games per division. I might do a little bit of adjusting, but for Season 3, we're going to be shifting a little bit of the schedule. The schedule is going to remain 2 games against everybody, except one little twist to it is we're going to take a little bit of an NFL approach. You play 4 games within your division, 2 against your other division within your conference, 2 against one of the other divisions in the other conference, but you don't play the other conference's division. It's still up in the air, but I'm likely going to probably go to that if we hit the 28. If we don't, we'll stick to the 2 games against everybody. But until then, we'll probably be knowing that a little bit closer to Season 3's kickoff. And also with the expansion draft. I know a few people don't like the expansion draft, and it's not something you want to lose. And I know that Gambini was one of them losing futures to expansion. This season, though, if we're going to be doing an expansion, which we will, I think Colin and Lloyd Xmas. If Aftershock doesn't play it, Lloyd Xmas, his team becomes Aftershock's team that he's currently using with Troy City. Colin would be the only other one, but we're only going to expose 3 players instead of 6. But if there was more teams, then we would expose more than 6. So we'll just leave it at that right now, but more to come on that detail. Our new team tab. This here, I think everybody likes what the layout is basically you have up here in the left, you choose your team, you choose the season, and you choose the type, whether it's a season or playoff. It will disseminate the whole page except here in the middle, which is a team graph, which you can control with the team, the season, the type, whether it's season or playoff, total stats or per game averages. And then if you do per game, you have to switch the points. You have to switch this as well, and you'll see how it moves. But if you go to like this total stats and you try to change it, you have to actually go to total stats and change it. Like that, goals. So this is all updated. Halifax, I know that you were asking about it. Why doesn't the most hits show up? It was showing up as an error. That's gone now. I've actually fixed it why it wasn't doing it. But now the hits are showing up there for every team. So every team's most player records will be showing up there, and they'll be tallying up as we go along. I don't know why penalty minutes for Brendan Shanahan is with Pitt, but he shouldn't be there. But also your team rankings per season with your stats and your schedule. So the schedule will be revamped as well, and I've also left space for the schedule to expand as well. You have your overall and your power rankings rating. So that updates from the power pools down here at the bottom. Next one is your player tab. So this one here, you can see your player's progression. You can see the numbers here. You can be like, okay, that's great. He goes from an 80 to an 89 to an 85, whatever it is. But on a graph, it looks so much better when you see a player's rating go up and down. You'll have his awards, whether he's won anything, like Alex Kolovalev, he's got a first-team All-Star. You also see his stats for the season. I have to figure something out to be able to say, here, show more stats for the players if it's a player, and if it's a goalie, just show goalie stats. But either way, you can see right here. You also see what year they were drafted in and by who and where they were picked. Also on top of it here, you can see New York EBC, but if you change it to 96, he's with Italy. Completely changes, and also his stats changed as well. So like last season, Kovalev had, what did Kovalev have? He had 83 points, 68 goals, 15 assists, and 275 shots. Czechs we didn't track in season 1, but if you look here in 96, he's at 54 points and 40 goals, but he's only played, I think he still has like 14 games left to play. So that's all we're going to hear. And the same thing goes here with the goalie stats. That's tracking from this little field right here with the wins, losses, ties, overtime losses, goals against averages, save percentage, and shutouts. But given that, you can see your career projection of your player here on this one tab. And then if you go down here, you can actually see a player by player comparison. We'll actually go down to 90 so you can see it a little bit better. Here it'll tell you the maxes. So the league average statistics are based on players that are played a minimum of 5 games and up to 40. So you can even go this up to 45, and the numbers will change, and so will the average, which is the blue line here. It's the same thing for goalies. It will apply here down. So I'm just trying to keep everything consistent. So you have the players and forwards and defense here at the top, and then if you do any goalie comparisons, you'll see it here. You'll have the league average. The player on the left is in the red. You see the border. Yellow is the player in the middle, and the player on the right is green. So you can see that all there. I'm still trying to figure out where the ranks are actually being calculated, because some of them are not showing a rank. So I got to figure that out. Hopefully I can get King Raph to help me out a little bit with that, with something with regarding a range of rankings. But other than that, you can go in here. So like if we wanted to choose goalies, you can go Urbe. You can go, here, Dominic Hasek. I always like using my own players. And you can use Kelly Rudy. Let's just say that. So if you look at, you can see here, like for statistics, obviously they're not going to be high because that's the league average for all players. But goalies, you can see here that Urbe has the most points of all the goalies, at least in those comparisons. And then the same thing goes over here where you can see, oh, Kelly Rudy's a little bit lower in the wins compared to Urbe and Hasek, but also because Rudy splits time with, who's his other goalie? Not important right now. I keep always thinking about it, but the Mullet's other goaltender. I know Kelly Rudy is one of them. I keep getting pissed off every time I have to do a box score trying to remember who it was. We're going to skip the standings right now because I want to do the team-by-team breakdown to show it. League leaders hasn't really shifted all that much. I know that Anaheim's kind of got Benoit Hogue now into the conversation, but he's not going to catch Joe Sakic, and Anaheim, unless Thomas Sandstrom could score 17 points in 2 games, I very much doubt that anybody will challenge Sakic for the title. But going through everybody else, everything else has pretty much stayed standard for the league leaders. I had a request from the Wolf to see if I can actually add a category specifically just for defensemen. I think I'm going to be able to add that. I just have to do a little bit more configuration of what I wanted this layout to look like. I have room here to add maybe 2 more categories on each row, and that will come. I just got to figure out which categories I'm going to put it in. Maybe time of possession, maybe become for a team one. I don't know. Maybe shots against. I have to figure out a specific category where I want to put it in. Maybe home and away records or overtime records, something like that. I can maybe put some more categories in here. And the same thing with players here. Maybe I can calculate goals per period. Oh, yeah, maybe even in this team stats, maybe goals per period. Who's got the best plus minus for first period? What's potentially, I might have to look at that down the road, but I don't think I will. Is like, how often is the team winning after this leading in the second period kind of thing. It's going to be a very tedious task to figure that out, but maybe I can figure it out. Power polls, it was updated only a couple days ago. The rankings have changed a little bit. Some people have taken a tumble. Like I said, it's based on performance of the whole league, but also based on your own performance. So don't look too much into this. Is just subjective. It doesn't have anything regarding like, hey, my team's not doing good. I'm behind this person. Who cares? It's for fun. You can see the stats and you can just basically get your own perception of it. Active players and forwards and incoming rookies. That hasn't changed. Basically, I'm adding the 98 people thanks to LHX. He's helped me with some of the players' rating basis. I'm going to post that probably before the end of the playoffs so people can start doing some research on their players on the incoming draft. Same thing with free agents and incoming rookies. The bracket hasn't really updated all that much, but if we do add another team, which would bring us to 28, we'd be able to have maybe the same thing where we have Pensacola and Sugar Valley, another one on the left-hand side here, and then we kind of have more of a balanced bracket. All-time leaders, I've added photos to all the players because some players do change teams. Eric Lindros is a prime example of somebody who's in the rankings in some of these tabs who's with a different team. Same thing with Dale Auerchuk. Some of these players have moved teams, and the same thing with goaltenders. Team records, this will only get updated at the end of each season. Also here at the bottom, I'm not going to be keeping track of that down here, but it will be something I'm going to add on another tab. It's league margins or league statistics, league averages, just stuff that people want to know. Like I know Halifax asks, like, what's the game margin of what's the goal margin of victory? Maybe I can come up with something like within those goals, within those game margins of victory, what is the shot outcome? Is it a plus or a minus? Is it a home advantage over a defense, an away advantage? Not sure, but something to think about. Some things to change down the road for everything. Awards. These are the front runners for the awards as of, I think, probably last week when I was doing this. And I think it was Sean Bell who says, hey, why isn't my guy in the rankings? Well, it's because some of these things need to change, and these are not finalized. Some of them are. I'm not going to specify which ones, but some of them have already been taken care of. We actually now have your Go-Getter Award for in honor of Halifax for the most body checks. So basically, this will be announced on our award ceremony, which we did last season. We'll do the same thing again, maybe a little bit more organized. And then we move over to our box score. This thing here is basically you can look for any game you want, and you see everything here. But I'm going to create actually a database that where you can pull up stuff from season 1, season 2. You can see head-to-head matchups, and it's mostly for the head-to-head matchups, so I can actually start tracking head-to-head matchups. So if you're like, hey, I wonder what's my record, like, so let's say what's Ultra Magnus's record against Mike EVC. Okay, let's find out. Oh, I got a losing record. I haven't won in 4 games against them. Something like that. Something that keeps people interested in, like, okay, what other statistical details could we add in? And now we move over to the last piece of information. We have our standings. There's a lot of little discussions regarding what's going to happen. We have potentially a three-way tiebreaker happening here in the Prince of Wales. If Troy City or TC Titans, I had to modify it because of some of the formatting. But if he wins his last 2 games, there will be a 3-way tie for first place. However, Nipples, since he won his division, he's automatically guaranteed seed number 1 or 2. That's already a foregone conclusion. So therefore, if they end in a 3-way tie, Troy Hill will play Lloyd Xmas in a 1-game winner-take-all for the division of the Red Truck of Death, Red Death Truck division. But then whoever is the winner of that will dictate who will be number 1 or number 2. Given the 1 or 2, if Lloyd Xmas wins over Troy Hill in the 1-game matchup, if he wins his 2 final games, he would take home the number 1 seed because he owns the tiebreaker over Nipples, which he owns, I think it's 1-0-0-1. So he won 1 in regulation he won 1 in regulation and he lost in overtime. So he had 3 points, and then Adolf or Nipples for the Pitt Intramurals lost 1 in overtime, but then lost in regulation, so he's 1-1. So he only had 2 points where Lloyd Xmas had 3. So therefore, Lloyd Xmas would take over the number 1 seed. But if Troy Hill beats him, Troy Hill would stay as the number 2 seed because Pitt owns the tiebreaker between them. But the Lloyd Xmas is one. The other reason why they would play a tiebreaker is because their head-to-head series was 1-1, and it was actually tied in goals as well. So there was no goal advantage between the 2 of them. So let's go into a little bit of a dive for each team. Pitt Intramurals. bouncing back from being the Prospect Cup champion, what a difference talent makes on the team. He does, I call it a little bit of a coin flip flick that he does into the zone. A few guys I've started noticing to do that to gain advantage in the corner, maybe get a dead man lane on the ice with a body check. But you never know. Maybe some styles will change for the playoffs. But he has a three-headed horse with Stevens, Forsberg, and Yzerman, and leading the pack with behind him is some stellar goaltending from Jim Carey. He seems like a dominant team in the force for the Prince of Wales. But there's just something. Is he too inexperienced for the Bruley Cup to be able to count him as a deep running team? We'll see what the playoffs hold. Playoffs are a different season. Everybody plays a little tighter. Everyone body checks a little harder, and goaltending plays a little sharper. So everyone's going to be challenged. I was a team that was strong at the end of last season, and then got swept by Mike Vick. And not holding anything against Mike Vick, a very strong player, but nobody expected him to take a run to the cup. Reminded me of the Canadians, just squeaked in and then squeaked everybody out. This season's a little bit of a different story for everybody, but we had actually 4 teams that made the playoffs last season that are not going to make the playoffs this season. So 25% of the league's teams that are going to make the playoffs this year are new teams. Troy Hill, the man with the mouth. His team is strong. Gary Roberts has been a good addition to his team. Holding down the fort, he had on some good winning streaks. Very tough to play against, but he does show some kinks in his armor. A little bit of defensive weaknesses don't really help his team very much, but he gets solid goaltending from Tebow, and his team is still strong. So the thing is hopefully he can reverse his outcome from last season where he was knocked out of the first round. My Orlando Cyclones, same story. Swept in the first round last season, 3-0 to Mike Vick, who was eventual the Bruley Cup finalist. Not powered by Olin Nolan as much this year. Solani stepped up a little bit, and I'm starting to get a little bit more support from Lindstrom and Schneider. Same thing on the penalties. I thought I was going to be the most penalized team again by a landslide, but some other teams came up, and Halifax, you're one of them. So you got the Halley Goon Squad that's coming up. I call them the Shipwrecks. Maybe that's a good name for his terrible 3 that go in there and body check everybody to death and take penalties. The terrible 3, a shipwreck team, or shipwreck line. Troy Hill with Lloyd Xmas. Thanks for coming in, taking over a team that we thought were going to have to forfeit all the games, and maybe we should have reconsidered that and not let you join because now you're challenging for the #1 seed. But probably one of the best manual goaltenders in the league. Very tricky to play against a manual goalie who handles manual goalie very well. But maybe it's the rookie, good luck rookie season. Like, hey, you started up. Maybe that applies to all the guys that are new in this season. None of them are really weak. Even I consider Sugar Valley a rookie team. He's been going through some stuff. The same thing with Elias. You're taking a guy from 94 to play 95, and he's starting to find his swagger. So hats off to him as well. But Lloyd Xmas is he might be a hard one to predict down the line. Next up, Sunnyvale. The Shithawks are shitting on everybody. His record doesn't look great for the losses, and the losses that he does suffer, it's always following a blowout that he's done to somebody. So he might win 6-0 or 8-2 in their blowouts. Very much a lot of his first games that he plays against somebody, he blows them out because they're not used to his style of play. He's the cross creaser. Nobody else does it better than him in the league. And as much as everybody thinks that they would, nobody beats McLean on the cross crease. He just has perfected it that nobody else can stop it. If you can stop it, hats off to you. If you can't, you're fucked. His team is ran by Stakic. You can shut down Stakic, you can shut down potentially the Shithawks, but you have to always look out for Zelapukin and Emerson. Ray Bork on the back end really helps move the puck up the ice and helps him out. And then you got Van Breesbroek in net. Kind of balances everything out, but he's another guy. He doesn't want to have a first round exit, and the hard thing that's going to come out of this is if it's me and him, one of us are going to be out in the first round 2 seasons in a row. So some changes might be coming to each team if there's an outcome for one of us. Autobahn with B. Clint 01. Steady Eddie, that's what I'm going to call him, because the man comes out, he balls, and his team, it's Shanahan. His team runs through Shanahan. And when I thought that when he lost Tim Shovelday, I thought like he was going to have a weakness. He wasn't going to be able to keep up pace. He was going to have a negative goal against differential. But given what's gone on with Blaine Locker, he might have some changes, but Blaine's played well. He's pushed him into a playoff spot. Likely he's going to sit in the number 5 spot, number 6 spot, my apologies. Unless Mike Vick EBC comes out of like nowhere. He's got 14 games, which would give him 28 points, 63 points. He could still push up to the top. And even if Sunnyvale loses his 2 games and Mike Vick goes on a tear, he can still push Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale can even fall down to number 6. Who knows? But Autobahn, it runs through Shanahan. Fleury's been pesky as always, but given what's going on with the season, Autobahn's going to be another consistent playoff team. The Taipei Typhoons with Nathan MB, an expansion team, played really strong. You want to finish the season with a couple W's. It does give you some momentum going into the playoffs. I haven't really followed much of Taipei's team overall, but I do know with the midget Klima on the team, it was a regression season for Klima. However, he has fell into a little bit more of a supporting role with Taipei, which is a little bit more of a balanced attack. Halifax. The Schooners are going to be the first team that we're going to review that's not going to make the playoffs in season 2. No fault of his own, but you have the shipwreck line with Oates. I think it's Oates, Fedorov, and Larmer. Man, they get in the box often. The new Broad Street bullies, but the shipwreck line. That's what I'm going to call them. And he's played solid all year. He's had victories where you're like, great, let's see Halifax get on a run, and then there's a sidestep. It's just, will Kirk McLean be able to be the answer to help him in the back, or will he actually need to change goaltending? Maybe bring in some different defensemen. He needs to start locking down his defense. Minus 42 goals differential doesn't really help you have momentum going into the playoffs, but it's likely he's going to be a force for the Prospect Cup. The next person up is Mike Vick EBC, the man, the mystery, the legend of what's going to happen. He's the wild card of this whole playoff now. The fact that he's the second least amount of games played, still with 14 left to go, it has a lot of weight on what he's going to be able to do. Kovalev is his master. Chris Osgood's been very helpful for him, and Niedermayer's been a steady force. And the big thing is with him as well, he's a -3 goal differential. He's had trouble getting going. He's put some W's together. I think he had a 4-game win streak at one point this season. But it's the consistency. He needs 4 to 5 games a night or in a night to be able to get on a roll. When you play 2 games, it's kind of hard to get on a roll, and then you're like, hey, I'm starting to feel good now. Let me play a couple more games. And he's that type of player, and he needs Kovalev to be able to start picking it up as well. Dinkelberg, surprisingly, the games that he's been winning have been really well. He got shut out in both his games against Thunder Bay for their last 2 games of the season, but they're only 2-0 in both of them. I think with Dinkelberg, the big thing for his team, minus 72 goals differential, but when you have Patrick Roy in your net, it makes it really, really hard, regardless of what everybody does. When you have a top-tier goalie in net, it makes it very difficult for you to be beatable, or at least blown outable, put it that way. But he's played strong all season. He's 8 games away from finishing his year. Another disappointing one, but will he make another prospect run? Who knows? He got into the finals last year, which was surprising by a lot of people, but he has the ability to do it. And then Gambini, hats off to the guy. The guy keeps plugging away. His goal differential this year is minus 97. It's not great, but he has played strong. In the games that he has lost, Maybe it's just bad puck luck. When I've played him, he's played strong. He plays the. It's weird. He plays the big teams well, and he plays down to the lower level players and stumbles. So it's kind of like, where does he find the balance between his teams? And with Messier and Sundin's going to start taking off in the next year or two, and Messier is he's going to start maybe regressing a little, but he still has the team to go in there. He's got Kolzig to take over in net, and Kolzig starts taking off, and he has a long career. He has Mike Pekka. Pekka is going to be a strong center for him, a very, very strong centerman to be able to win those pucks for him. And then you have Sumter Trash. It is night and day from season 1 to season 2. Bad puck luck. The team that's been shut out the most. He hasn't really had the mojo this season. Pavel Bure hasn't really gelled with the team. I do know with the Trash, it's going to be a dumpster fire this offseason where he's going to probably trade off things and refocus the team. The great thing is about this league is that you have a chance to rebuild your team quickly, but you also have to make sure that you got the right pieces in place. You can look at a team and say, hey, how the hell is he doing this with a 60 overall, but he's still plugging away? It's positional players, it's the rating basis, it's basically your talent level as well is going to play a factor. And I know with Sumter, he told me, he says, a lot of the guys in the league got a lot better. They did, but at the same time too is that their teams got better as well. You can be really good, but if you have 60s across the board, you're not going to hang with guys who have 90s. There's going to be something that's going to give. And then we move over to the Clarence Campbell, but before we do that, it looks like our top 8 spots are going to be Pitt, Troy Hill, Orlando, Troy City, Sunnyvale, Audubon, Taipei, and Italy EBC. Halifax, I'm sorry, bud, but you're not going to be able to give her in the Bruley this year. You're going to have to give her in the Prospect. Because with 14 games in hand, 14 games left, and you're currently at a tie, it just, by the numbers, you're just going to be pushed down. And Mike Vick, you're going to slide in, but then after that, that's where it's interesting. It's all based on seeding. Who's going to play with who, and who's going to play against teams that you don't want to play against. I don't want to play Mike Vick. I don't. I don't want to get swept. As much as it is, and I got blown out in the first round last season too. Moving over to the Clarence Campbell. Everyone was saying it's top heavy this year, but I think both divisions have their strengths and their weaknesses, but at the same time too, Clarence Campbell is a far stronger conference, and it's based on, I think there's a 100-point differential in total points within the conference, but you also have to think there's an additional team as well. So you have to kind of take that into consideration. But when you look at it, you have Thunder Bay, another expansion team, probably one of the hardest teams to play against in the league. I actually take pride in the fact that one of his losses came to me. So I'll take that every day. But he fell 2 points shy of breaking the league record for the best record in the league. King Raft still holds it from last season. It was 39-6, 1-3, I think, something like that. But he did it with 2, and King Raft did it with 2 less games played. So there you go. Thunder Bay runs in sons with Eric Lindros. He's basically been a force for him all year. It makes it very difficult to play against when you got a big body in the middle. Hopefully somebody who ever has Scott Stevens might have to clean him up over the middle and when he enters the neutral zone or into the offensive zone. But he's been carried by Tom Barrasso, which has been very helpful for him. He carries a 90-goal differential, a plus 90, which nobody, I think King Raft is the closest one with 71. But that's a lot of points, and that's a lot of goaltending. So he's been relying on offense as well as defense, and he put together one of the best seasons we've seen so far in the young existence of the WNHL 95. But he's going to be a force to reckon with the seasons to come, but also at the same time too, this is what I just said before, talent level on some teams, it's going to drop off or it's going to accelerate. When Eric Lindros is the top player in the league right now because of his overall, kind of expect him to be high up there. And I know Bombjack complained that Lindros is not good. There's something wrong. He gets pushed over. Sean Bell showed exactly how Lindros is supposed to be used. Moving over to LHX, another consistent, strong team in the league. when you have Belfour, who's in contention again for the back-to-back brick wall trophies. He's got a little bit more of a stiffer challenge this year with Barrasso, but Belfour again carried his team. He broke his record from last season, 73 points. It makes it really difficult, and he made some tough changes too. He got rid of Gary Roberts. He brought in John Leclerc. He's moved pieces around, and it seemed to be some smart decisions. It's played for in his hand. The Minnesota Mullets ending the season with an overtime loss, but both games went to overtime against Mike Vick. Not the way you want to end the year, but at the same time too, another stellar season by the Mullets. Will he have a deep run again? It makes it a little bit trickier because we might actually have ourselves a Segathon matchup in round one. Likely it's not going to be. It's likely going to be a matchup between Highland and the Mullets because King Raf still has 2 games left. And Highland might actually fall again too. It might be a Richfield Mullets first rounder, because if Richfield still has 7 games and still can give him 70 points, which would still pass Highland Wolf, which would push Wolf down into the 6th spot. But given that, King Raf once again, 29-2. Let that sink in for a second. 29-2 in his last 31 games. After starting the season, dismal start to his season, but 29-2. Enough said. I don't even have to get into the discussions. And the guy that I give my hats off to, I think it was Taipei. And if it wasn't Taipei, I think it was Sean Collins with Grand River that knocked him off back-to-back games. So Anaheim, he lost Kalima. Welcome Thomas Sandstrom. Ugly fucker on his photo though, but Sandstrom once again. I think he surpassed Peter Klima's point total from last season. And then you add Benoit Hogue to the max. And then you also add a strong Phil Housley. Excuse me. A strong Phil Housley who's leading the league in assists. And then you also add Urbe again. So it seems like he's got the recipe for success. And I think whoever King Raf puts on the ice is going to succeed. It's just he's got those twitchy thumbs that just, I don't know, it hypnotizes players, and players just lose their focus. Then we move over to the Highland Wolf. Another stellar season for him. A little bit of a down play from last year, I think. I think he was 2 points less than last season, and with 2 games more played. So it was a slight regression. Richter's was consistent again. Brett Hall has taken a step back. So did Clark and Riche, but I think he has more of a balanced attack. And it's like I said at the beginning of the season, he's one of the players that has developed different scoring styles instead of his cross crease or the Canadian dump. He's going to be a tricky team to play against. He's a tricky team to call because you don't know if it's going to, whose matchup's going to be. Who does he match up best against? He's one of those teams that he matches pretty much solid against a lot of teams, but is he deep enough to be able to make another run this year? He got ousted by King Raf last year, but this season it might be a little bit too much for him with the talent level in the Clarence Campbell. Moving over to Richfield, the Oracles had a dismal start as well. I think they started 3-5, which is unacceptable for the Oracles, given to what they got into the conference finals last year. But when you got Danfus, Lemieux, and I think his John Casey in net, his team, and he's got Zitnik. He's a strong, consistent player, and the big Segathon deep run as well. I just don't think. I think that he has the chance this year to make some more noise, but the thing is that it's matchup based. Some of these matchups are going to be really hard to call in the Clarence Campbell. But I know that he's going to make a difference when he can. Grand River, once again, strong player, new expansion team, doing as much as they possibly can. But Auerchuk, that's been their main player. North Bay, another expansion team, seems to have locked up that last seed. So we have our 8 teams in the Clarence Campbell. Charleston Chiefs with Sammy Smith and the Gophers, both guys. A little bit of a disappointing season, but they're going to see what they can do to get back into it. Prospect Cup matchup. It's going to be another Segathon somewhere. Then you have Surrey, Pensacola, and Sugar Valley, all moving on. Had a couple of disappointing seasons, but all of them are going to have a bounce back year. They just got to recalculate. So based on that, everybody, that's this week's video. If there's anything you want to see, let me know, DM me, and we'll move on from there. I'm your host, Ultra Magnus, and I'll see you guys next week.